It's delicious. Hello, hello. Welcome to our second live seminar of the day. I hope you're all well. We're going to, if you were on the morning session, this afternoon is exactly the same session. So if you want to recap, by all means, join in. But for those of you that are just logging on, today is all about how to pour the perfect espresso and how to calibrate your equipment, make sure that it's all set up and that you're getting the maximum amount of flavor in the cup for our coffee. So what I've got in the hopper today is I've got our earth coffee, which we're going to be using. But this method that I'm going to go through will also work for the lunchbox and the Machumba coffee as well. So those three blends, this will work. It will also work pretty much for any coffee, so any of our retail range as well. But obviously the recipe will change slightly, so you might have to adapt what I go through very slightly. So how this is going to work is we are going to talk to you a little bit about the grind size and about having a coarse grind and a fine grind and where you want it to be and how to get the perfect extraction. So first of all, take a group handle or portafilter out of the machine, give the basket a wipe, and you want to make sure this is nice and clean. So we want to be working with a clean espresso machine and a clean group handle. That's the first thing. After a day even of serving a lot of coffees, the coffee machine is going to start tasting pretty bitter. The water coming out of here isn't going to be very pleasant. So it's really important that you're back flushing and cleaning your equipment correctly. Okay, so we take that out. This is nice and hot. We've had this stored up in the espresso machine, so it's nice and hot, ready to go. It's not laying down on the side of the machine. Okay, so now let's start to talk about the actual grind itself. So for espresso, we want a really nice fine grind. We don't want it too coarse because what will happen is that water will flush through the coffee way too fast. So how we always describe this is imagine you have two buckets, one with rocks in and one with sand in. Now imagine that we've drilled holes in the bottom of both buckets. And what we're going to do is get 2 jugs of water. Now, these 2 jugs of water are exactly the same size, and we're going to pour them at the same time through these 2 buckets. Now, what will happen is the bucket with the rocks in will have lots of big gaps. So that water will travel through really quickly. Whereas the bucket with the sand in, it's going to take a really long time for that water to gradually work its way through. It's just like that with coffee. So what we want to do is to be between the rocks and the sand. So rocks is basically symbolizing coarse coffee. So the coffee is way too coarse, water is going to travel through really fast. But if your coffee is too fine, it's going to take too long. So think of it really simply like brewing a cup of tea, for instance. So if you were to take your tea bag, put it into the cup, take it straight out again, not going to taste very nice. All you've got in that cup is just pure caffeine. Okay, it's going to give you a bit of a rush, but it's not going to have any flavor, no sweetness, no acidity. The other end of the spectrum, if you leave your tea bag in for ages, what's going to happen? It's going to stew, it's going to taste pretty grim. We don't want that. Okay, we want a delicious cup of coffee. We don't want a tea. So what we want to do is leave it in for a nice amount of time and then take it out at the correct time. And what we call this is extraction. So we're extracting all the good stuff, leaving behind all the bad stuff. So this is why it's really important to follow a recipe. Now, we obviously deal direct with farmers and their families, and we think that it's really important that you maximize that. They've gone through a lot of hard work to get that coffee to us. We roast it to this profile. You end up with this beautiful coffee sat in your hopper, and then you can destroy it in seconds. Okay, so this is what this is about. So making sure that you are doing the farmers justice. They've worked really hard. Each individual one of these beans has been hand-picked by someone. So it's really important that then you do your bit and make sure that you're brewing the coffee correctly and being an amazing barista. Okay, so let's get into it. So we've talked about taking the handle out and wiping it. Okay, you can also use a brush, is fine, but just make sure that it's nice and clean in here. And all we're going to do to start off with is we're going to pretend that we've come in the morning or we've come onto shift. And this is what I'd like you all to do, is just to pull a shot off of the machine. Okay, so I can actually visually see that this is actually dosing a lot of coffee. Even without weighing it, I can see that that's quite a lot. But we're not going to adjust that for now, because what we want to do is just pull a shot through the machine just to gauge where we're at. Okay. So I'm going to pop the tamper on top. I don't want to see anyone banging it with the tamper. You need to always just distribute with the palm of your hand. Tamper on top, lean onto it, brush it off. Okay. Also good practice just to give the coffee machine a little rinse. Pop it in and then push your double shot button. Okay. So with this machine, it's quite fancy. So it actually counts the shot time for us. Now, some of you may not have this luxury. Most espresso machines, in fact, won't actually count the shot time. So what a shot time is the length of time that the coffee is brewing. So when you put the handle in and you push the button, you want to start a timer, maybe on your phone or on a stopwatch. And when it finishes, then stop the timer. That time is your extraction time, okay? So where we want that to be is, if you're on earth coffee, we recommend between 25 to 30 seconds. If you're on Machumba or lunchbox coffee, we recommend between 20 to 30, but 25 is the optimum, okay? So that shot there was 19 seconds. So that was actually a bit too fast. So at the moment, we've just got a cup of caffeine. It's not very pleasant. It's going to sort of be in the front of our mouths. And you can see the crema's like a bit thin, watery. It's not, where we want it to be. We want it to be a bit richer than that. This is actually not too bad, but if what you definitely don't want is for the shots to be running at like 9 seconds or something. So that's just going to be even worse. So we're going to get rid of that. So we know that we need to adjust this grinder. Now, can any of you in the comments tell me whether you think we need to adjust the grinder coarser or finer? I'll give you a second to see if you can suss it out, what I need to adjust. Okay, so we've got a few mixed views there. So what we actually need to do is adjust it finer. So if you thought finer, you were correct. So basically the coffee at the moment is a little bit too much like rocks. So we need to make it more like sand. We need to fine it down and really try and compact that coffee so that it slows down the extraction. So squeezing out all of that flavor. And that was the whole point of the espresso machine, was that it was designed by the Italians to actually, squeeze out and get all of the flavor out of the coffee. I've somehow managed to put the machine into eco mode, but we've sussed that out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is weigh the shot. So coffee actually needs a recipe, which a lot of people don't realize. So I'm going to use a small scale today. Reason being is because some of you may not have access to a really big set of scales. If you do have access to a bigger set, it's more ideal, because you can actually put the handle on there like that, tear it, grind the coffee in, and check it like that. You don't have to put it into a cup and then pour it into the handle. So it does make things a little bit easier. Okay, so we've turned the cup. We're going to go into the grinder. We're going to grind our double shot of coffee into there. and we're going to see how much we've got. So we've got 19 grams. Okay, so for earth coffee, we actually want 18 grams of coffee going into the handle. If you're on the chumba or lunchbox coffee, you always want 16 grams of coffee. Okay, so at this step here, what you'd want to do is take the coffee out until you're at 16 grams of coffee. Okay, I'm actually going to grab a little spoon. And I'm going to take off a gram because we're at 19 grams. Okay, so that's 18 grams. And now what we want to do is put it into our handle. So the grinder was actually overdosing. So what I mean by that is it was giving us 19 grams of coffee rather than 18 grams. So I haven't actually adjusted the grinder or anything yet. I'm just literally getting all of the parts of the recipe correct before I adjust anything. Okay. So we call this blessing the coffee. All right. So that gets rid of any grounds around the top, and we say, bless you. Give it a little flush, pop it in. And we're going to grab our cup, pop it underneath, and you can see how fast that's coming through. So if you're ordering a coffee in a cafe or in a hotel and you see this, don't drink it. So that's 12 seconds. Okay, so again, pure cup of caffeine, not very pleasant. We don't want that. Disgusting. What we want is silky, delicious espresso that's going to like coat our mouths, feel it on the sides, and we're like, oof, that is gorgeous. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that. And now we're going to make it finer. So we know that with 18 grams, it's definitely, we've got the grammage correct, and it actually made things worse. Hopefully you guys are following this, and hopefully it makes sense, but fingers crossed. Okay, so we're going to tear our cup again. We're at 0. But this time what we're going to do is adjust the grinder. So most grinders, or all grinders, have a way of adjusting the grind. So what I mean by adjusting the grind is we're moving the blades either further apart or closer together. So to make coffee finer, we want to move those blades closer together. And to make it coarser, we want to move them further apart. So in this respect, we're at 12 seconds. So we actually want to move the blades closer together. So we make finer coffee so it's more compact, so that water takes a longer time to come through. So we come up onto the grinder. You usually have a locking nut. So this one has this little thumb screw that we turn around to the left just to loosen it off. And then now that will allow us to move the collar around. Usually 9 times out of 10 with grinders, the smaller the number, the finer the coffee. So we're currently, there's a little arrow here and it's telling us that we're currently on number 7. Don't worry too much about the numbers. They're just there as a guide. People always phone me up and say, can you help me out with my grinder? It's on number 7. What number should it be on? Doesn't work like that, sadly. It all depends on how worn your blades are. And I mean, the engineer could even take off the collar, move it round, and it could be on number 10, but it's still the same grind. So it really, the numbers don't really have much relevance. All they are is for you as a barista or as a professional. They're there as a guide so that if you know that you last adjusted this grinder and it was on, let's say, number 4, and you come in the next day and it's on number 8, you think, hang on a minute, someone's adjusted the grinder. So you know that that should be on number 4. So it's that's really the reason why. Okay, so we're on number 7. We've loosened this off just so that it moves. And what we're going to do is move it one number at a time. So we're going to move it to number 6. We're then going to screw it down so that we're locked off. And we always, it's really important to pull one double shot off, okay? Okay, so this gets rid of a thing called retention, which is basically where the previous shot or the previous coffee grounds get collected around the burr. So we want to get rid of all of that, because otherwise it will throw you off. You'll get really confused. So always get rid of that first double shot. Okay, we're going to do the same again. We're just going to grind a double shot into our cup. And we're looking for 18 grams of coffee, or 16 grams if you're using one of the other blends. We're a little bit over, so I'm just going to take that down so that we're at 18. Okay, and transfer it into our portafilter. Try not to throw it everywhere, like I do. Because obviously if you lose too much coffee, then it's going to completely change the recipe. So it's really important not to do that too much. Okay, I'm just distributing it now. Then tamper on top, lean onto it to make sure it's nice and compacted. And then bless. So you basically, blessing is to brush off any excess around the outside, so we're not jamming that up into the machine and around the seal, because otherwise you're just going to get all this horrible bitter coffee up there. Pop it in, cup underneath, double shot button, start that timer going, and say hopefully now we should have gone from 12 seconds. I predict it'll probably be like 18 seconds, so we'll be a little bit further along. 15. Okay, so it's a little bit better, but it's still not great. Okay, so we've gone from 12 seconds to 15 seconds. We've still not got enough sweetness and acidity in there. It's still going to be, pretty bitter, or sour, should I say. So at the front of your mouth, pretty unpleasant. Okay, so let's get rid of that. So again, use a brush or a cloth, wipe it out. Problem with coffee is it is rather messy, so it's always worth having separate cloths. So like I've got here, I've got one for my coffee, so I'm trying to keep this cloth dry for coffee grounds, and then I've got one on the espresso machine solely just for the steam and for milk. Okay, so obviously we moved that one notch, so we moved it from 7 on the grinder to 6. Still not fine enough. So what we're going to do is move it another number. So we're going to move it down to 5. So same the process before. Just going to slacken that off so the collar moves. We're going to move it down to 5, tighten it up, throw away the first one. Okay, and then tear your scales. Looking for 18 grams of coffee, so 18.3, so only just over. Okay, 18. And we're then going to pop it into the water filter. Cool. Distribute. Okay. And then tamp. Less. Right, there you go. So we can see now that that's looking pretty good. So we call this mouse tails is what we're looking for. So really lovely, fine streams of delicious espresso. So where we're squeezing out all those beautiful flavors that are locked in there. Okay, 22 seconds. So we're really close now. Okay, so we're only slightly off. Now, when you get to this point, and you're like 22, I would always recommend pulling another shot off of the grinder, because it could be that you may still have had like a little bit of retention in there. If you then adjust it again, what could happen is you then go too far and it then runs to like 35, 40 seconds, and then you've then gone too far. So you've got to come back. So what we're going to do now is exactly the same as before. just pull another shot off. Wipe your basket. Okay, I'm going to tear our cup. Grind our coffee. Beautiful. Check we've got 18 grams. We've got 18.6, which is no good. We want 18, please. 17.9. 18. Boom. Okay, we're then going to pop that into the portafilter. Okay, try not to lose it all. Distribute. Tamp. Now, I know this seems to some people like a bit of a faff, but honestly, when you try the difference between a perfectly extracted coffee and one that's just way too fast or way too slow, it's chalk and cheese. Honestly, it makes such a difference. And once you get the hang of it, and this is quite extreme as well, so I've really adjusted the grinder quite a long way out to demonstrate like a grinder that hasn't been adjusted for a long time. So once you've been doing it, you'll only hopefully you'll only need to do this really like once a week, but it will only be really slight adjustments. So don't panic on that. I know that's always something that people say to me as they're concerned about how long this is going to take and whether they're going to waste loads of coffee. But once you get the hang of it, trust me, it won't take long. You won't be wasting much coffee at all. And you can always, once you get it to like this point, you can always then just tweak it as you go. So this coffee is still going to taste delicious once you get it to like that 22-second mark. So you'd still be fine to make that for a customer. Okay, so we're 22 again. So that's cool. So we know that we're bang on there. So we can then take that a little bit finer again. So I'm just going to do the same thing as before. Loosen that off. Move it round. I'm going to go a little bit less though. I think I'm not going to move it down to 4. I'm going to go maybe 4.5, 4.6, around there. I'm going to try that because we don't want to adjust it too far and end up with coffee that's too fine. So it's getting that balance. Okay, do the same again. Waste a shot. Okay, so this time we're actually less than 18 grams. And the reason being is because we've moved it finer, it's a lot harder for a grinder to grind fine coffee than it is coarse coffee. So if we were to adjust this really coarse round here, we'll get like loads of coffee. It will way overflow that because it's so much easier for it to grind. So yeah, that's it really. So we just need to up that a little bit. Take a bit of that off because I put a bit too much in. 18, perfect. So we can then transfer to our portafilter again. Yeah. If you ever heard the story about the Ethiopian goat herder that first discovered coffee all those years ago, there's a few different versions of this story, but the one that I like to tell is that he was out wandering his fields one day and he noticed that his goats were getting all giddy. So he thought, well, I'll try these coffee cherries and see what they're all about. So he started picking these cherries. So you can see now it's looking good. And he had a munch on them. He was like, God, these are making me feel great. Loads of energy. Ran them down to the local monastery, as you do. And he said, guys, you need to check out these new funky coffee cherries that I've just discovered. So, so they tried them and they were like, oh, awful idea. Threw them in the fire. We're 30 seconds, so we're on the money. We've done well there. Threw them in the fire, and after a few minutes, they were like, what's that smell? It actually smells rather good. So they went over, scraped them out of the fire, and what they were left was something like this. And they sort of tried eating them. They got stuck in their teeth a bit, and they thought, oh, no, that's a bit unpleasant. But we've got lots of flavour in there. And that's apparently how it started. It was he then started grinding the coffee down, I imagine probably just with 2 rocks or something, because they didn't have one of these there, and a multi-boiler coffee machine. And it went from there, really. And that's how coffee was first discovered, and how it's gone from there into where it is today, with all these fancy machines and amazing bits of equipment. So that really is how you adjust the grind side of the grinder. Now, the last part of the puzzle is adjusting the electronic bit. So what we've been doing is we've obviously been adjusting the grind and getting that correct with our scales. But now what we want to do is to set it so that every time when someone comes up to use the grinder, they don't have to use the scales. So how you do that is a little bit of trial and error. So what we want to do is, again, tear our scales. So use a cup, pop it on there, or say if you've got your big fancy scales, then brilliant, you can just tear the handle. And then we're going to pop the cup underneath, and we're going to press that for the double shot button. And we're going to see how many grams we've got. Okay, and we're actually nearly bang on. So it's 17.8 grams. So what we want to do is get that to 18 grams for Earth coffee. Again, if you're Machumba or Lunchbox, you want to be 16 grams. So we're going to go into the menu. Now, the grinders all vary on this. Some of them, if you've got the older compact models, what you have to do is press the 2 and then the menu button. And then these 2 lights will start flashing, and you can go up and down using buttons 2 and 1. If you're ever unsure about this, you can always drop me an email, or you can email our service department, and we can talk you through how to adjust this. If you've got one of these new models, you basically go into the menu like so, press recipes, dose, and then dose 2, because obviously we want to adjust the double shot. We don't do single shots. And what we want to do is just put this up ever so slightly, press OK, come out of there, and then we'll try that again, and then hopefully we'll be about bang on. There you go, 18 grams of coffee. So it's quite straightforward once you get the hang of it. I'm sure some of you has probably blown your mind, because there's a lot that goes into it, and we've only really just scraped the surface here. But it's hopefully this will help, and let us know what you think, because we'll definitely be doing more of these types of videos. But yeah, any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to get back to you. Thank you so much. Cheers.